Hey all, welcome to part 15 of Beyond Two Souls. Now we're going into the Hauntings chapter, and this is the flashback chapter I mentioned in an earlier part.
Is Nathan okay? When will I see him again?
I don't know, honey. He hasn't left his office in 3 days. He loved his wife and daughter more than anything in the world. But we can try again tomorrow, okay?
I think what makes this scene that much more effective is when you think about the effect this situation must be having on Cole as a sort of middleman, given Nathan's obviously deep in his own grief, and he's also trying to look after Jodie while Nathan's feeling like that. That must be such a tough position to be in. But as for the way they're using Laura's ghost, I quite like this. With the whole ghost encounter sort of thing, they could have gone the jump scare route, or they could have tried to make it really creepy, but they're not. They're literally just using the ghost to lead Jodie towards Nathan. And it's a bit of a change of pace when you consider how they went the jump scare route in, say, the Condenser chapter, and to a certain extent in Navajo. Whereas now it's a little bit of normality, because this ghost isn't trying to scare Jodie at all. She's just trying to get Jodie's attention.
Jodie, what are you doing here? It's late.
It's really hard hitting to see Nathan in this state as well. Given up to this point, we haven't really seen him particularly emotional outside of the night session chapter, because we've mainly seen him either as the carer figure for Jodie, so he's quite high up there, or in, say, the briefing around that sort of period where he's really high up in the DPA.
What did you say?
It was so quick. Mommy couldn't do anything. But it didn't hurt.
Stop it, Jodie.
It didn't hurt at all.
You hear me? Stop it right now.
We're here, Nathan.
But I'm pretty sure chronologically this is the first time we see Jodie using this particular power. Because this power was part of the main focus in the Condenser, and it was also used for this exact same purpose in Homeless, when Jodie was communicating to Stan from his wife who had passed away.
They've gone.
Please. Don't leave me. Don't leave me. I missed him so much.
I do have to compliment Willem Dafoe's performance of Nathan as a broken man at this point, because it does communicate how Nathan's feeling so well. Next up is the last full-length chapter in Beyond Two Souls, Black Sun.
The condenser in the Republic of Kazakhstan has been destroyed and the rift is now inaccessible.
So this jumps back to the chronology that we were following before that flashback happened. So this is set directly after the Dragon's Hideout chapter.
Strategic and military perspectives. Now we're going to launch new programs to discover possible energy resources and develop military applications. We've already found ways of linking entities to human soldiers, and this is just the beginning.
Now this guy talking right now, that's McGrath, and he is basically a complete
We have
dickhead.
discovered a new world. A world
And his delivery of that with "discover the new world" line sounds really forced, but I'll let that one slide because the character presented as a complete dickhead is presented well in that way. But the long story short of what's happening is in Dragon's hideout, the mission was to take out the condenser from Kazakhstan, and we're now clocking on to the reasoning for why McGrath wanted that condenser gone. It wasn't anything to do with like the good of humanity or anything like that. It's just he wanted the CIA to have exclusive access to like the rifts, so there wasn't a potential for any other countries to get a one-up.
Just a typical cynical asshole. You know, I would be doing the country a favor if I let Aiden take care of him.
And while Ryan does like still want to associate himself with the CIA and that after all this, there was a little bit of character development, I guess, there, in that he felt sort of regretful for having played a part. Because if you compare that to how he was acting in the mission chapter, where even after he'd seen the innocent guy had been killed, he was just like, well, I guess job done.
Some time to
Now he's sort of not really too pleased about it.
figure out what I really want.
And what about you?
CIA has it all mapped out for me. Top tier, big car, golf meetings. I mean, I haven't given him an answer yet, but it's worth considering.
And I think we can see where this is going right now.
Jody, I know it's been complicated between us, and I didn't always do the right thing. But maybe we could start again. You know, try and build something together. I mean, after all the stuff we've been through, maybe we could make it work.
I'm going to take the option to get them back together, which it doesn't really affect too much in the story what you pick here, but while I'm taking this option just to show it off, it feels really unrealistic that even after they'd been on like that massive adventure in Dragon's Hideout that they would get back together like this, because fair enough, like they'd done a lot together since the mission incident, but this guy being responsible for you killing innocents, that's probably quite a hard thing for Jodie to overlook.
Come on, I'll take you to his office. Later, Ryan. Oh, you know what? I got a single malt in my office that needs sharing. Meet you in a few.
Never say no to a single malt.
Great. I'll see you in a bit. Let's go, Jody. Nathan's waiting.
I touched on this briefly in the briefing, but when I see Cole in the proper lab, so like with his own office and stuff, compared to how he was in the chapters where Jodie's a child, it really shows the progression this story has taken. The fact that this character, who was just a researcher, and he wasn't really a leading researcher or anything, he always gave the impression he was working under Nathan. To see him now having his own little gig within the DPA, it really shows how far the story's gone since the early days, and I like that because it makes it feel a more rounded, complete story, rather than just seeing a little segment of these people's lives like you get in the kind of stories that just take place over a couple of years or so.
Call me when you're done. I'll come pick you up. Whatever Nathan says, be careful.
It might seem like it's come out of nowhere, but we'll see.
Jody. I'm so glad to see you safe.
I kept my part of the bargain. Now it's the CIA's turn.
And this is showing that the level of bitterness that this whole ordeal has put into Jodie, because when she was first meeting back up with Cole and then Nathan in Old Friends and then Briefing, she was much more enthusiastic to see him than now when she's talking to Nathan, where she just wants to get this over and done with.
You're now Elizabeth North. No identity and no life.
That name, Elizabeth North, that was the fake name she was using in the Embassy chapter.
$500,000 for services rendered. That should help make a new start.
I'm starting a new life. I don't want anything that reminds me of the old one.
Before you go, there's one last thing I'd like to ask. When my wife and daughter disappeared in that accident 15 years ago, I wanted to die too. I cried a lot, banging my head against the wall, trying to figure out why them? Never being able to hold them again. It was like a wound that wouldn't heal. But then you came along, and I realized they were still here all the time, near me. I just couldn't see. The government gave me everything I needed to study the infraworld. They were interested in military applications. I was interested in seeing my family again. It's taken me some years, but I finally succeeded in creating this.
Now this is Nathan as a really broken man.
Hello, my darlings.
And it just shows how much that really hurt him. Because on the surface, he's in a much better place than he was years ago, but the fact that even despite being in this really high up position, that sees over so many people and he's obviously earning himself a lot, he's not got over this ever. He's never particularly been able to invest himself in his work because this has been playing on his mind the whole time, and that's just really powerful as a character trait, as a storytelling trait. I like the way this is delivered.
Their voices. I want to tell them what I'm doing. Until I finish my research, you're the only one that can do it.
Give me your hands.
My darling. I missed you so much.
Let us go, Nathan. You're hurting us. You've got to let us go. Let us die.
You're lying. Helen didn't say that, you did.
You're keeping them here. They're being torn apart between two worlds.
That's not true. You're lying.
I know they want to be with me again. I know they want to be with me.
Nathan, I know how you feel.
You know nothing about how I feel. You hear me? Nothing.
Goodbye, Nathan. I hope you find peace.
That's another point where we just see what a complete state Nathan's in at this point. Because is everything that he just can't move on. And while this is put in an unrealistic presentation because of the entities, that's some people will naturally not be able to move on after something like that's happened. So that's a well done delivery of suspending disbelief to the right amount, because there are a lot of people out there who, if this were technology and skills available to them, if they were in that situation, they would act like that. They would desperately try to cling on, and that's why it's such good storytelling at this part of the game. Now come on, can these people do anything to us that doesn't involve bashing us around the head?
Hi, Jody. Good to see you again. Well, you put us in a very difficult situation, you know that. We can't let you go. We can't kill you either. We don't know what you'll do on the other side. So there's only one appropriate solution. We inject you with a neuro acid, which will put you in a permanent coma. Exactly what we did with your mother. A simple and elegant way to put an end to our collaboration.
This is simple and elegant. This isn't costing thousands while being completely inhumane at all, McGrath. Come on.
Grateful for your help.
This is the point where he didn't even try to work out some kind of arrangement. He just went straight for the injected coma, and that says quite a lot about McGrath's character, really.
Jody. You opened my eyes. It was so obvious, but I didn't want to see.
Help me.
I'm going to accomplish man's oldest dream. Nobody will have to die anymore. No one will ever be separated again. The containment field. I'm going to
While Nathan's trying to argue that Jody's opened his eyes, he's still on this obsessive wanting to bypass death, to the point where he's more invested in telling Jody about this than helping her out of her situation.
I've beaten death, Jody.
And that's not him being an awful person, that's literally just his emotions have overtaken his logic, his reasoning.
Everything is gonna turn out fine.
The way this is presented to us, this almost kind of makes up for the horrible presentation in the mission to me. Just as storytelling goes.
You're too weak, Aiden.
Well, we've seen Aiden throwing around huge crates and shit like in the CIA training, but he can't pull like a needle out of someone's hand. Are we really gonna roll with that?
Get help. Hurry.
But at least it does kind of make this entire scene much more dramatic, so there's that.
Where's the rest of your team?
Vince and Nick? They have 3 months leave. They're on a beach on some exotic island, no doubt.
Lucky bastards.
So this is one of those just get their attention type deals, and it means that we get to throw around a lot of cool stuff. Inconsiderate, but we need to do it. I'm not sure exactly how many things you have to trigger here to properly get his attention, but it's quite a few. You just need to start knocking stuff around. But it kind of surprises me it takes as long as it does to get his attention, given that Cole spent many years of his life with entities and knows how they work. So to not see like one thing fly and think is an entity, those.
Aiden? Is that you, Aiden? This is a joke, it's not funny.
Why would I?
What is it, Aiden? Where's Jody? Lead us to Jody, Aiden. Show us the way. Right. Now where?
This entire segment of Aiden bringing Cole and Ryan to Jody, it's a good kind of conclusion to the bond we've seen between them, of Aiden in earlier chapters being mischievous to play with Jody when she was a very small child. We saw in the My Imaginary Friend where he helped her sneak out to play with other kids so that she weren't meant to. Then over time we saw him being quite controlling of her in the dinner chapter, where he was just intervening with Jodie's chance with Ryan in the first place. And that's all progressed and progressed and progressed onto him being legitimately concerned for her and then going out of his way to save her. Is another thing. Progression is basically my thoughts on this chapter as a whole, really. The fact that everything we've been seeing from these characters over the course of the game has kind of come together. I think it's little things like that that are why me playing it a second time and getting to know the story a bit more and like looking into it and getting to know it inside out is why I've come to appreciate it so much more.
Level 3 authorization. He's with me.
Now, don't get me wrong, there are a lot of faults with this story, as I whined a lot about in the mission, and the general wackiness of it is a little bit out there. But as a whole, I do really like Beyond Two Souls. And I really like Beyond Two Souls so much more than I did the first time, because the first time around I originally thought this game got kind of boring. I was playing through it, I wasn't properly invested in the game, because it felt like there were too many chapters of just wandering around. Like the stuff where Jodie was a child felt like a drag. All those chapters just felt like more time wasters than anything. But going through it another time and seeing everything, it all comes together as a story. And because I knew where things placed on the timeline, I had that extra appreciation.
Sorry, you are on the list. My apologies. Go on through. Thank you.
If there's one thing I'm not sure about how I'll go about presenting, it's the fact that at this point we had that flashback of Jodie communicating Helen and Laura's thoughts to Nathan just before we saw the current point of Nathan having a complete breakdown and talking to them again. I'm starting to think that maybe if we'd seen the Hauntings chapter a little bit earlier, and if we'd perhaps seen a midpoint chapter, like about halfway between this chapter and Hauntings. Maybe during the part where Jodie's on the run from the CIA, around that sort of time frame. If we'd seen then of Nathan in some form of work, like either in the small DPA lab or working his way up to here, if we'd seen him then trying to do some sort of task but having the memories of Laura and Helen, and have that set in the game playthrough order somewhere between Hauntings and this one, with maybe some of the CIA stuff in the middle, just so, like, to keep that particular theming going, then it might have been a little bit more effective than just having the flashback directly before the story implementation of that. It just feels like a little bit rushed, just putting that element in there. That's kind of what I'm getting at, really. If we'd had more of Nathan's grief playing on his mind, then I think it would have been more emotionally effective to see this conclude with him having his complete breakdown upon realising that he'd been torturing their entities for so long just because he so desperately wanted them back. But ultimately the entities are getting out here because Nathan's gone completely out of it. And having someone with that mental state so close to a giant condenser wasn't gonna end successfully in the first place. So what you think has happened has happened. It does make sense that Jodie's not quite as panicked as she once was, because we're seeing all these entities flying around, and obviously that's terrifying to the people who have very little experience in handling entities head on. But compared to the ones she was dealing with in the condenser chapter, it's a complete different beast, because she was like right in front of the condenser then as well.
But the last thing the InfoWorld needs is a son of a bitch like you. Get out of my way.
Clayton, get me out of here immediately, Clayton.
And this is where I get all my respect back for Ryan. Fuck you, McGrath.
Consider that my resignation.
You're all gonna die here. We're all gonna die.
I love it when dickhead characters get completely knocked down, because, like, fuck them, they deserve it. But what we're seeing there in the background is the Black Sun itself, which is the giant condenser they've been keeping here. And there's been a few bits of foreshadowing the Black Sun throughout the game. One of those things was one that I had indirectly brought up in the My Imaginary Friend chapter, which was Jodie's drawing. If you remember, it had loads of swirls and lines all over the place, which looks a little bit like the Black Sun condenser. And also, in Like Other Girls, when Jodie's a teenager, she had a poster on the wall that looks like one of these alternative band posters that had a design that looks a lot like the Black Sun. That's all obviously intentional in terms of the, like, meta, which is, I like little nods like that, even though it means nothing in-game, because obviously none of this had happened then. But I always appreciate stuff like that. It's my nerd inside me. I just love little bits of foreshadowing that I can look back and think, oh yeah, that was what that was on about. We're seeing the kind of characters these three are now, truly, because they know they're likely to die through this.
Been before, so there's no telling what we'll find down there.
How much time do we have after we've activated the self-destruct?
The system was designed to be activated remotely. The explosion will be practically instantaneous. We're not coming back.
And now we get our gameplay. Because as you get closer and closer to the condenser itself, you get way more of these things flying at you. And it's a very similar sort of way of dealing with them as it is in the condenser chapter itself from earlier on. You got your typical prompts where you hold down L1 and use the analog sticks to knock them back or squeeze them in to kill them, either or, depending on context. I'm not sure what triggers which one of the analog stick prompts it is. This is really a combination of the gameplay from the condenser and the gameplay from Welcome to the CIA and the mission. As fiddly as I find this running from wall to wall thing, it works here. It's much less obnoxious because there's less like dud walls that you don't want to go to. This entire scene here just looks so cool.
Fuck! Jody! They're coming! Jody, no! I'm sorry, Princess. You're gonna have to go on without me.
No, wait. I'm not leaving you.
Find the Black Sun, Jody. Or nobody will make it. He's right. Come on, Jody.
Now, it is possible for Cole to die for good, and it all depends on whether you use Iden to heal him here or not. And that will have a knock-on effect to the epilogue. So you can either save him or leave him.
Aiden's done all he can.
And this is probably the best point for me to make a bit of a clarification on something I brought up in the Homeless chapter. It's about one of the trophies. It's called A Better World. At the time I was on the understanding that that was exclusively referring to Walter and Jimmy in that particular chapter. What it actually is whether you save all the characters that can die or whether you let them all die. Because that's between two trophies. There's Saved All, which are save everyone who could possibly die in the story, and A Better World, which is to let everyone who could possibly die. So to go through those characters that affect these trophies, there's Walter and Jimmy from Homeless, like whether they die in the fire or not. There's Paul from Navajo. I forgot to touch on this, but I let him die. If you go to heal him with Iden before you trigger the ritual sequence that puts Yatezo to sleep, then you can save Paul. Is Nora in the hospital. If you end her life with Iden, that counts towards A Better World. If you leave her alive, then it's saved all. And Cole just then. And there's a couple more characters that we'll see over time. And it's not really worth stepping around spoilers at this point because we're at the end.
I lost my baby. Have you seen him? No. No, Ryan? Ryan?
Walking towards the Black Sun here, this is one of the iconic sequences that I always remember from Beyond Two Souls. It's just Jodie walking towards the huge Black Sun condenser while seeing all the other troubled people around and the entities from those who've died.
I can't find them! I call them, but they don't come!
maybe it's because they don't recognize you anymore. Your anger has changed you.
I miss them. I miss them so much.
Let me pass, Nathan! The condenser must be destroyed! You know it's the only way!
Oh, I missed you. I missed you so much. You're the only one who can fix this, Jodie. Do it.
That is a good conclusion for Nathan's story. He's finally at peace.
Jodie, fuck, there you are. What happened?
Reasoning with Nathan there does get you a trophy in itself called Convince Dawkins. But ladies and gentlemen, this is Endgame. I'm trying to make out what that thing is, but it reminds me a little bit of the giant eel that was attacking us in Dragon's Hideout. And I know it's not. I know it's more like an oversized entity that, like the ones we've been fighting up to this point in this chapter. But it's got the same sort of body shape, just maybe with more shadow tentacles than a single tail.
Fucking monsters! God, these damn belts will be dead.
My containment field's not working.
What? You sure? Just check the panel.
I'm telling you, it's not working.
Fuck. Fuck. I gotta think. Think of something.
What are you doing?
You stand the best chance of destroying the Black Sun. Just take this and
No,
do it.
those things are gonna slaughter you.
Take the damn belt and destroy the fucking condenser. Get out of here before I change my mind.
inject you with a neural acid, which will put you in a permanent coma. Exactly what we did with your mother.
It's too late, Jody. It's too late.
This section here consists entirely of the QTE gameplay prompts, and if you fail these, that's the ending you get. If you fail the QTE prompts, Jodie won't make it to the condenser, and that will be your ending.
I'm sick and tired of your stories! Jody, this time you're really gonna get it!
Give me back my child!
Calm down, Nora.
I want to see her. My little girl. My little boy.
For God's sake, what's going on? The twin. He strangled on the cord. We couldn't do anything.
Son. I want to see my son.
Aiden. My twin. My brother. Still more.
And there you go.
We couldn't leave each other. Our souls were bound together. I loved you and hated you for years. You were a part of me.
And now, this is where you decide your ending. And this is why some people really do not like the ending of Beyond Two Souls. But it's also partially why I like the ending of Beyond Two Souls. Because it lets you weigh up on your consciousness and lets you decide how you think the story should end, given what's happened to Jodie up to this point. You can either choose to remain living and see another day, or you can decide that Jodie's story concludes here. And I feel that is an extra dimension to the story, because all the things that have happened to Jodie up to this point, they're now in your control of how you feel they should have influenced it. While I won't knock the pathway systems some games have as their alternate ending triggers, I feel this works for this game in particular. And to finish off my little spiel about the Saved All and A Better World trophies, the last two characters are Ryan and Jodie. And the outcome of how Ryan possibly dies, in the sequence where you're trying to reason with Nathan, if you don't go for the reason prompts, then out of anger he will shoot and it will hit Ryan, and so he won't be able to continue. But as it is, I've gone with the life option. I'd like to see the next step for Jodie after everything she's been through up to this point. But ladies and gentlemen, join me next time for the finale of Beyond Two Souls.